Holly, do you have a script for either of the new business items tonight that needs to be entered in?
No, because they are not public hearings. They're
Okay.
a unique critter.
Okay.
Good question, though.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it someplace in my packet. So I can't hear you guys very well. Let me see if I can turn this up. Vicki, did you hear from anybody else if they were planning on attending?
Yes, Phil is unable to make it. He said he might try to log in, but it was very doubtful.
Okay. So I'm sorry, do we have a quorum? Am I missing something here on my screen? Oh, somebody just joined.
There you go. There's your
Okay.
form.
Alrighty, so I'll ask point of order first. Are we good on the technology for me to go ahead and call us to order?
Yes, you're good to go.
Awesome, thanks, Vicki. All right, it is 6:31, 3/21/2023. I will go ahead and call our regular Hubbard Planning Commission meeting to order. If you would all join me in flag salute and pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks for everybody joining us tonight. We have a few items to cover tonight. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the February 21st minutes.
Second.
I didn't hear a motion. I heard a second. Did somebody motion that?
Motion. I'll second it.
We have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? So those are accepted. Next order of business is new business section, and it is partition application file PA 2023-01 for Robert Miller. And so I don't know if you want to take that over, Holly, if you want to go first, and then we can
Sure.
present some questions in a
Sounds
bit.
great.
All right.
Is it helpful when I put the staff report on the screen so you can kind of follow along while I scroll?
Sure.
It's up to you. I
Okay.
don't mind it. It's I mean, it's fine if it's there.
Okay. And let's make sure I can do that now.
Hold on, I don't know if I have that.
Vicki's going to grant me all the power.
There you go. You have
Oh.
power.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're not doing that. What? Okay. Get to the correct staff report first of all. And then, all right. So, man. As I was explaining last month to our new commissioners, some of the agenda items you have are large and some of them are small, and some of them require public hearings. Your 2 agenda items tonight do not require public hearings, but there's still a decision made by the Planning Commission, which is kind of a unique situation. So the first one is a partition. It's really important to know as a planning commissioner, there are 2 different kinds of land divisions. A partition results in 2 or 3 parcels total, and a subdivision results in 4 or more parcels. So this is a partition. It's a 2-parcel partition, and it is an existing residential home on 7th Street. It's on a large lot in the R1 zone, which is the low density residential zone.
Excuse me, Holly.
Yes.
I think you have the technical review one up on the screen.
Can you, oh, you can't see that here. I'm glad you said that. Let's share the other one.
Well, you can thank Julie. She's brought that to my attention while I was writing.
This one?
Yes, now I can see the correct one.
Oh, it changed for me and not for you. I apologize, but thank you for telling me. Okay, so this is a 2-parcel partition in the R1 zone. Your development code tells us that the R1 zone purpose is to support single-family housing in your community. There are some other uses allowed, such as duplexes on corner lots mostly, but this is primarily single-family homes with a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. And so let's get into this here. Here's your vicinity map. So the property is located here at the intersection roughly of 7th and G Street. And here's what the aerial photo looks like. With 7th Street frontage, the house is set back from the street to the back of the lot there. And so what is being proposed by the applicant is to divide the property into 2 with a flag lot configuration. A flag lot means that you'll have a long strip of land on a driveway to get to the back house. And so the existing house will be on the back lot, which is being referenced as parcel 2. And then the brand new parcel will be up front on the 7th Street frontage, and that's parcel 1. So that's what's being proposed by the applicant. And when the city receives a partition application, there's certain criteria they need to consider. And those are all found in the Hubbard Development Code. So starting with the R1 zone, you'll find there's a lot of redundant criteria here. So I'm going to skip down here to the next section, which is 2.208, and that's development standards for land divisions. This section of criteria applies to both partitions and subdivisions. The first criteria requires that the lot be at least the minimum lot size of the zone, which is 7,000 square feet. Both of the parcels created here meet that criteria. One note here is that when you have a flag lot, we don't include the flagpole portion in the lot area. And so here, parcel 2 is 10,875 square feet, but when you take away the flagpole portion, it's 8,800 square feet. So it still meets that minimum lot size. The next criteria is about lot width and depth. This makes sure that the city is creating lots that are developable. They're not long, skinny lots. We have enough room to make feasible development happen there. And so that ratio is a 2.5 times, and both of these lots meet that. The next criteria is about access, and this is important that we're not creating islands or landlocked properties. This asks us to confirm that all of the properties that are created through land divisions have at least 25 feet of frontage on a public street. And so that's what the flagpole does for that rear lot. It provides that 25 feet minimum width of frontage. So that standard is met. Let's see, duplexes or townhouses do not apply. So section E here is about flag lots, and this is specifically for parcel 2. It does meet the 25-foot width. There is a requirement that the improved surface or the paved driveway be at least 12 feet wide. That comes from both the public works standards and the fire code. Typically, fire access lane would be 20 feet paved, but they do have provisions for 1 or 2 houses on a driveway to have only 12 feet paved, as long as there's 20 feet of clearance, 13 feet high. So in this case, we're good. And then there's also a provision that says that if that access is more than 200 feet long, then you have to have a turnaround. And so that's a hammerhead turnaround typically. And that's also for the emergency or the fire apparatus to turn around on that long driveway. In this case, a turnaround is, it doesn't seem to be required based upon the location of the existing house. But that measurement was not required. And so that is included as a standard condition of approval, that if that fire standard's not met, then a turnaround would be required. Let's see, no through lots are being proposed. A through lot is when you have a street on each side of the property, like you could drive through the property from one street to the other. That does not apply here. Side lot lines, it says as far as practicable shall run at right angles to the street upon which the lots face. Again, this is so we're not ending up with really funny shaped lots that are not developable. There's some order to the division. See, lot grading is reviewed at the time of building permits, utility easements. And so this is kind of an unusual partition because there is an existing house on the property, which is not that unusual, but the fact that the utilities are proposed to be relocated. So you'll notice that there are existing sewer, existing gas, and existing water lines running through parcel 1 to the back house. And those existing lines are proposed to be essentially vacated or capped. And then there are new lines proposed through the flagpole to the rear house. And then those existing lines could be used by a future house built on parcel 1. When we partition applications like this, both Public Works and the city engineer review it. And so they have done here. There are no utility easements required on the property itself because those are private service lines when it goes from the meter to the house. As far as public utilities, those are running within the 7th Street public right-of-way, and they are there existing in the street, and there's no additional easements required for that. The next section is about improvement requirements. So this is an important table at the top of page 7 in your staff report. This says when you are performing a partition or a subdivision, there are certain public improvements that you're required to pay for. Remember, especially in small communities, it's so important that development pays for itself. And that's something that we'll keep repeating over and over again. Development needs to pay for itself. And so these are the things that are required of a land division. They're listed here as the fire hydrants, street improvements, water hookups, sewer hookups, storm drain, and street lights. We've had a couple of other infill partitions like this in this neighborhood where they're just, the 2 parcel partitions. When there's no other existing frontage to be filled in, for example, with street widening and curbs and gutters, oftentimes what the city can do is sign a non-remonstrance agreement that defers that street improvement into the future. And it basically says, applicant, we're not requiring you to widen the street right now in front of your property because it doesn't make sense because the abutting properties don't have that. And that facility wouldn't make sense at this time. We should note that there is sidewalk connecting to this property. And so a sidewalk is required on the frontage of this property. And that's a standard condition of approval, and that is consistent with what's been required on other recent residential partitions. Okay, redundant standards here. So what I'll do is I will go through the recommended conditions of approval. Ultimately, staff is recommending approval. These parcels can be made to meet all the requirements just by following these conditions of approval. So I'll run through those here. A is sidewalks. And this says that prior to platting, the applicant shall construct 5-foot wide sidewalks along the full property frontage of parcels 1 and 2. If it doesn't make sense for the timing of development, especially of parcel 1, there are ways that the applicant can defer those to a later time, including a performance bond, and that would not be unusual. B is about driveways. Both of the driveways are required to be paved, especially important for that rear one for fire access. So those are included. C is about fire access to parcel 2. D is about street improvements. Again, street improvements that include street, curb, and gutter are not required at this time, and the applicant can sign a non-remonstrance agreement instead. Drainage. This is consistent with recent partitions in the neighborhood. The applicant needs to show Public Works what their stormwater control plan is for a new parcel 1 house. And so that typically is an underground injection system or a French drain. And that's something that Mike Krebs would review in Public Works. F is about utilities. Parcels 1 and parcel 2, they need to have their own separate metered water and sewer connections. And then SDCs, or system development charges, will apply to the new house built on parcel 1 someday at the time of building permits. G is about public work permits, and that's anytime you're working in the public right-of-way, Public Works Department needs to sign off on that for those new utility connections and the new sidewalk. And there's also procedures to go along with that. All right, and then the rest of this is pretty standard language here. The Hubbard Development Code grants, let's see, they grant 2 years between the time that this written decision goes out and when that plat needs to be recorded at Marion County. And I've also included the county surveyor comments there just so the applicant understands what the procedures are. I think the applicant understands that he needs to have a professional licensed surveyor prepare a final plat to record this partition. Once that partition is recorded, then it is a permanent land. And then your development code also has safeguards so that we don't have serial partitions of someone doing a partition and then another one, trying to skip the subdivision big picture requirements of public improvements with rough proportionality. And so most city codes have a time limit here is you can't record another partition within a year of recording that plat. So that's pretty standard language there. I have included a recommended condition of approval here, and that's in bold at the bottom of page 10. So that's it from me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Otherwise, there's no formal public hearing. If the applicant wants to say anything, I think the Planning Commission could certainly call on him. Otherwise, there's no formal public testimony. There was a neighbor comment period and no comments were received. And so it appears that the neighbors are not concerned about the proposed partition.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.
So planning commissioners, do you have any further questions of either Holly or do you have a desire to, we have the applicant here. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Does the applicant have anything he wants to say to us? Retirement.
Yeah, I was just, I don't know, it's probably something I can talk with Public Works about though too, but when I relocate those, the water and the sewer, I wouldn't be against doing a new sewer hookup and the water hookup and paying the SDCs at the time of the relocation rather than, and then just use the other ones for the new residents. Because I don't know if they'll let me go and put the relocated utilities in without paying SDCs.
No, you'd have to pay the SDCs to get the new services put in.
Right, because they had the SDCs to be paid for at the time of the new permit on the new piece.
Right, yes, that's the way it would go.
Okay, so what about, but to complete the plating, I have to have the utilities relocated and the driveway improved before I can even complete the plat.
So typically the SDCs are paid at the time of issuance of the building permit.
Okay,
So when you, and I understand there's, you already have utilities there on the new lot.
but
So,
there's no utilities serving the existing lot.
right, so Mike's saying whenever you connect those over to pay those is what my understanding is.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, on this one, because it's a little bit different than what we usually do. We could probably go with the SDCs on this one at the time he applies for a building permit.
Okay, so we can do the improvements and relocate them and then pay the SDCs when we do the new lot on the existing utility taps that are already there.
Yeah, normally what would happen is the old lines stay with the old house, new
Yeah.
lines go to the new house, but since you're switching over, we just have to show that the old stuff has been discontinued to the old property before you put the new one in, and then we just hang on to charging you the SDCs until the new line was in, or the new building permits were applied for.
Okay,
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Vicky, for clarifying with the applicant. Yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Mike, do you need to inspect how those old existing utilities are capped off?
Yes, I do. I need to take a look at Adam at the time that they're discontinued to the old house.
Thank you.
So Holly, just a point of clarification, the point that they were pondering there with the language that you have in the approval, we're still good. That's the appropriate language. There's no amendments that would need to be made in order to accommodate what the conversation that just happened. Is that correct?
Let's double check. That was a very important clarification. So in the conditions, number or letter F, utilities says system development charges shall be assessed on the new dwelling on parcel 1. So that sounds like it works just fine.
Awesome.
So I also want to make note of the addresses because the new utilities coming in are going to be addressed at 3360, which is at the existing house. So the new lot will have the old utilities, and that one's going to be addressed as 3370. And the reason I'm saying that is because the utility bill will be, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to how everything's going to be addressed.
Go ahead, Holly.
Vicky, are you saying that Mr. Miller's existing house, the address will change?
So, hold on just a second.
Or just the address on the billing account?
Probably just the service address, maybe.
Yeah.
So the 3360 is going to be the existing house, which that's what the address is out there currently. The new one will be So when they go to do the meters and stuff, they're gonna have to change the meter addressing or whatever. I'm just making Mike aware of that.
Sounds good to me.
Crystal clear.
All right, any other comments or questions germane to this partition? If not, I would entertain a motion to, well, I'd entertain a motion. We'll select which way the motion goes, so.
I'll motion to proceed with the,
I'll second.
Okay, so I'll clarify, so a motion to accept the partition as presented to the planning commission?
yes.
Great. Any discussion on that motion before us? We have a motion and a second. Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approval as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Congratulations. Now you got some work ahead of you. Alrighty, getting back to our agenda, second item up. I gotta move around here. Is technical review of application TR 2023-01 at 3724 Pacific Highway 99E. And I'm assuming you've got some words of wisdom to tell us, Holly.
Yeah, so this is kind of an unusual one. You don't get very many of these. The Planning Commission does not usually consider sign applications, except when they are electronic display signs. And so those are the electronic reader boards. They can scroll and flash and do all of that. I think it's been, oh gosh, 5 years since the last one, something like that. So it's been a few years. What is being proposed here is an electronic display sign on an existing sign post. And so this is a signpost shared by two different businesses, and that's Mariscos Morales and Yerba Buena. And those are located between the Dollar General and the furniture store. And so that is in the C commercial district. And these signs are allowed in that district. And there's just a couple of decision criteria for the Planning Commission here. Okay, so here's an image. This is the existing sign. You'll see that those two businesses are located here just off of 99E. They have a shared driveway here. And so what the applicant is proposing to do, I apologize, I turned this sideways here just to save space. But essentially up top, they would have the Yerba Buena, and then they would have the electronic reader board. And then down below, they'd have the Mariscos Morales sign. For the new planning commissioners, it's good to understand that in sign code, we are essentially blind to the actual message of the sign. So it could basically say anything we wanted up there. All we're looking at are the dimensional standards and the materials and that kind of a thing. So we're not so much looking at the message on the sign itself. Here's the site plan that shows the two existing buildings, the parking lot that's shared, and then this is the location of the sign here. And they've included the setbacks from the property line. One thing I will mention later, there is a required 20-foot setback in this zone along 99E. However, the existing sign the applicant is reporting is 19.5 feet. So it's just short of the minimum setback requirement. However, there are provisions in the code to essentially use any existing sign posts. So what that means is we can grandfather that non-existing location there. I'll get into that in a sec. Okay, so the review standards, I've included in here just for your reference, because this is probably new to some of you, what an electronic display sign is, some of the things that it can do. I'm not an expert on all of those things. And then I've also included just the regular sign standards in here, because I think it's important for you to become familiar with all these different pieces of the development code. again, you don't get to see the sign standards very often. The one thing I do want to point out is subsection J here. As I just mentioned, it allows pre-existing signs that may not comply with that setback, but they are already in place. And the alteration of it, the addition of that electronic display sign, does not make it any more non-conforming. It's not moving it any closer to the highway than it already is. Okay. And so it's really interesting how signs are allocated. For commercial businesses, you have a certain pot of square feet of signs that you can have, and that is divided between a freestanding sign out front of your business and then attached signs on the walls of your business. The way you get that number is you calculate that based upon the length of your property frontage multiplied by your multiplier here, which is 1.5 square feet. So in this case, the property is 138 feet in length, multiply that by 1.5, and you have 207 square feet. And that is their allocated sign amount. And then for each type of sign, there's a maximum size. So even though they can use up to 207 square feet, for a freestanding sign like this, it can only be 100 square feet in size. And so what they're proposing is 96 square feet, so that complies. There's also a maximum sign height of 20 feet, and the existing sign posts are 19 feet, so that meets that. And then after you take away your freestanding sign, you still have your remaining pot of signage, then that's when you apply those to your wall signs. There are existing signs on both of the buildings, and so the applicant has provided those here. It's really interesting math that we don't get to do on a daily basis and we don't think about a lot. I will say that there is a temporary banner on the marijuana retail shop that will be removed, and the applicant indicated that in their package. And so all the signs on the buildings are in compliance when that banner is removed. There was a secondary sign on the north wall of Mariscos Morales that wasn't referenced, which I believe is still there, but they still have plenty left in their sign allocation. So big picture, everything meets their allocated amount of signage. Let's see here. This is a section that applies specifically to electronic signs, and they're pretty simple standards to meet. There's only one sign, one electronic display sign in each development, and that's true. The electronic display sign shall be included in the maximum sign area, and that's true. We just went through that. And number 3, the sign shall be integrated into the design of the identification sign, and that's true. The existing sign posts are there, and this sign is proposed sandwiched between 2 other static signs. So this application meets the criteria before you, and I've included a couple of conditions of approval. Most of these are already language in the development code, so you could say, why do we bother putting them in conditions of approval if it's already in the code and we know they already have to comply? It's helpful, I think, for the applicant to see them as a condition of approval so they know that there is an ongoing obligation to comply. So in this case, we know they have to remove the banner, and then the property owner is responsible for the ongoing compliance, and so that's maintaining the sign. And then they also are responsible for complying with the Oregon Motorist Information Act. ODOT actually has some jurisdiction on signage along 99E, and it's important that they check in with ODOT staff to make sure there's no concerns with the proposed sign there. So the recommended motion is included on page 9 of the staff report in bold. That's it from me. I have no further concerns. I'm happy to answer questions. I don't believe these applicants are on. No, they're not on this evening, but if we have any questions, we could take them back to them.
Thanks, Holly.
Are there any standards as to like a brightness level, like how many lumens it puts out, or is that something that's covered by ODOT?
Yeah, I think ODOT might have standards. There was one section here. That's a good question because we want to make sure that our roadways are safe. Looking at these a little more closely here. So talking about internally illuminated sign under conditions of approval B. So number 1 says that it will not shine into residential dwelling units, or it will not impair the vision of a driver. 2 says the light intensity of an illuminated sign shall not exceed the accepted standards of the sign industry as provided by the OESA. So I assume that because this is a professional sign company that they are familiar with these standards here. And I assume that ODOT will enforce that.
Okay.
And I think this is also important, number 3, that no sign or illuminating device shall create a hazard to the public, and that no colored light shall be used to be confused with traffic signals or emergency vehicles. So they can't have a big spotlight up there, you know, rotating around in the sky.
Like flashing red and blue
Yeah.
lights.
Yeah, we're not seizure inducing frequency here. So it's important for driver safety. So that was a really good question.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna ask along those lines, and also the flashing. I think you kind of answered it. The sign maker most likely aware of all of these regulations that ODOT puts out. Do the signs get approved or by ODOT? How do they test to make sure that those meet those qualifications?
Yeah, I think ODOT has staff that review the proposed signs within their jurisdiction there.
Any other questions or comments?
And has anyone gone out and made sure there aren't any residences that the brightness of the sign would be shining into bedroom windows or anything?
Because this sign is located on the frontage of the property, there's no expectation that it would impact any residential dwelling units. It seems like the dwelling units closest to it are located behind buildings and some vegetation. Perhaps Mike or Vicky have further comments, or Julie, further comments about proximity of dwellings.
Yeah, there is a house directly across 99E from it, but that's approximately 100 feet from where the sign would be. And yes, we are talking about the back of that house. But that would be the only residential area there. And that's the one that's right next to the city shop.
Right, okay. So fortunately, the sign's not facing them. They would be
Right,
perpendicular to.
right. It would be directed towards traffic instead of away from any windows that they'd have in the back of that house.
Thanks, Mike.
So I had a question for you, Holly.
Mhm.
On the language as to one of these signs per, I think it was development or per area, and I'm just using this as a hypothetical, but so the furniture place next door would be considered a separate one if they wanted to have a sign. Dollar General would be considered a separate one. Is that an accurate? I mean, that would be.
I believe so, because they're separate properties. Yeah.
Sure.
If they were all developed concurrently as one kind of mini mall or one marketplace with all a shared sign together, I think that you would have a hard time making the argument they could each have their own, though.
Okay. And that's just kind of what I'm looking down, down the road as to what kind of density we could have with these. And it may never happen, but it's just something to keep in mind. So.
Well, and a really good thing to think about, this is a section of code that we have noted for potential revisions in the future, because the procedure here is pretty unclear. It's unusual to have a technical review go to the planning commission and have conditions of approval. Like there's no formal application for an electronic display sign, but the planning commission decision is required. So this can be smoother. This can be more streamlined, I think.
Okay. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, I would entertain a motion to move forward with this item of business.
There's some motions on page 10 recommended if you wanted to use those. Or I'm sorry, page 10.
I motion to approve the electronic display sign as presented in the technical review file.
I'll second.
Motion a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion carries. That's the end of our items for business. I did have a question for you, probably Holly or Vicky. I'm not sure who to answer. Next month, we were supposed to have more business on our plate in terms of the development that's happening potentially along Third and J, or actually it's not J, but well, it would be J out here ways. Is that meeting, are we planning on that meeting being in person again?
Yes.
Okay, so just for our commissioners to know, or for their information, that one will be in person. I think it's probably a good hybrid for us to, when we have a lot of public interest, to be able to do that. I know, having been on the commission for a long time, it's good to be able to meet people face to face often. And with us being not under nearly so many conditions of COVID, it's this is nice for us on occasion, but it is good to have those in-person meetings. So.
And I will say, I know that the planned unit development project next month has had a lot of time extensions on it or continuations, but we're not legally able to give any more. So it will be scheduled for next month.
Okay. All righty. Well, if that is the end of the business on our agenda, somebody want a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, I guess. Yeah.
I second the motion.
All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thanks, guys. Much appreciate you showing up and being here, and good to see everybody.
Thanks again.
Good night.
Thank you,
Yes.
Glenn. I'll have minutes whenever you're able to stop by.
Okay, I'll try and pop in. Probably it may be Thursday. You guys are there Thursday, but not Fridays, correct?
That's correct. Just at your own time. It's fine.
Awesome. Sounds good, Vicky. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
All
rest
right,
of the
take-
week.
Bye.
Bye.